Kyle, and you are back watching Knockouts and 3 Counts, and we might have just seen the end of a legend, at least in the UFC, in the last fight for Anderson the Spider Silva. And as we talked about in last week's episode with TZ Scott, like I said, to me, that's one of the best entrances of all time. Again, let us know what you think the top 5 best entrances are, whether we're talking pro wrestling, whether we're talking about MMA, whether we're talking about boxing. I mean, hell, if we're talking about boxing, you can't forget Tyson Fury, man. That guy's got quite the entrances as well. As always, since pandemic and going forward, we've got Corey Lay with me, brother man. How you doing?
Another day, another 50 cents, it feels like. But how the hell you doing, man?
I'm good. I survived Halloween. As you can see from my Twitter and Instagram at Detroit Knockout, I was a little dead inside last night. But all in all, it was another. I'm just thankful to be out for another Halloween.
I had a great time taking the kids out. Got to stroll a couple blocks of the neighborhood before they got too cold. At least it was fairly warm for most of you viewers out there with kids. I'm sure you guys understand that feeling. It was fairly decent for a Halloween. But that being said, the thing that made this Halloween pretty decent was the fight night from the UFC. Like you said, kind of saying goodbye to a legend, I guess you could say, is kind of how I viewed the night.
So it was weird though, because they're hyping this up as this is going to be his last fight in the UFC. But I said this going into the fight, just because this is his last fight for the UFC, especially with how he looked. If you watch the fight, this isn't going to be Anderson Silva's last fight. All in all, the crazy thing about this fight is the fact that Anderson looked good in rounds 1 through 3. I definitely would say he won round 1 for sure. You know, round 3, he got dropped at the end of round 3 before we went into round 4. But even at that, he was landing shots on Urijah Hall as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what you would say, Corey, but to me, I would ultimately say that the thing that has always made Anderson Silva dangerous is the very thing that caused a problem in this fight. Because I think Michael Bisping, who would know better than most what Anderson Silva is capable of, noted it best. Anderson Silva has made a career off of pot shots and one-shot knockouts and things like that, where most people, you see these knockouts come from combinations that are thrown, whether it's punches and kicks, punches and knees, punches and elbows, high kicks, whatever it is. Silva has had, like the one against Forrest Griffin, where he looked to just seemingly barely throw a punch and Forrest Griffin died. So, I mean, like I said, the very good explanation of how Anderson Silva fights. But to me, that was the thing that caused him a problem. If you watch, you see how he's doing these kind of things, and he's doing this, and he's doing that, and he's doing this, and he's doing that. Yes, that opens up shots for you. But at the same time, with Anderson being later in his career, I just felt like you kind of saw that he was kind of like a step behind in a way, because Hall was able to catch more of those. And once Hall kind of got past that stigma of, oh shit, I'm fighting Anderson Silva, and started putting together combinations, he started to land, as we saw at the end of the 3rd round and ultimately in the 4th round. I mean, great statement win for Urijah Hall. First of all, give me your thoughts on the fight, Corey. And what do you think is next for Urijah Hall?
So I agree with your latter point and the fact of once Urijah Hall actually realized that he's trained to throw punches, and he does this for a living, then
and
the fight
he's
kind
one
of
of the best in the world.
The fight kind of changed from there, but I also think the biggest thing was that I don't necessarily think is being played up enough. I think he got severely hurt at the end of the 3rd round. And I think because of his age, he didn't quite recover as fast as he may normally have prior in his career. And I think going into the 4th round, that's why if you watch back the actual knockout sequence, you can see he just comes in 1, 2, 3, and on his 3rd or 4th just wild hook swing in is when Hall landed the knockout shot and put him actually down. And I think it was the fact that Silva wasn't quite clear yet. He knew that he had just suffered a knockdown, but felt like he needed to be more offensive, so he just threw himself into the fire.
See, to me, this more kind of leans into what I was saying with him being able to use his unorthodoxness. Because if you listen to what Bisping was saying in the fight, in that end sequence, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that Anderson hadn't cleared out the cobwebs yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, he was just kind of throwing so wildly, which is so uncharacteristic for him because that's how he catches people.
Well, that's kind of, not to interrupt, but I feel like that's kind of what's gave him his longevity in his career, is the fact that he is keeping his arms busy, so you never know where the punch is coming from.
I agree.
Even though it may only be one pot shot or two. His
but it
combos
stops
are
their
limited.
rhythm, and they're not able to throw like that. When
And
ultimately
he's
people
taken
don't
far
realize,
less
I mean,
damage
a
because of
rhythm in a fight is so, having rhythm in a fight is so crucial, just like the Lions not being able to finish a touchdown drive, but I digress.
Well, you can absolutely, realistically, I call it leading the dance. I've seen tons of analysts call it that as well. Because you can really see when somebody truly is the one out there leading the dance. I'm sure we're going to touch on it here in a minute, but in the co-main event, you could really see when the tide started to turn towards Touchy Fili's momentum swing. You could see that he was truly the one leading the dance when Bryce
You mean Urijah Hall?
No, I'm talking about
you're
the co-main event.
Okay, he's switching around. Okay.
Yeah, that's what...
I got you.
But going back to the main event, it's essentially the same thing. You could see when Urijah Hall did actually start to lead the dance, and he wasn't just trying to...
He wasn't in awe of Anderson Silva. I feel like that's a real thing that's not talked about a lot. When you talk about Anderson Silva, you can't neglect the fact that we're talking about a guy that... and again, shout out to Michael Bisping, who's really stepped up in his role as a commentator and things of that nature. One thing that he highlighted that I thought was very underrated is the fact that, you always hear people say there's levels to this shit. Well, Anderson Silva is on a whole nother level of his own. Mm-hmm. I would argue that the majority of guys who are in the UFC or in martial arts or MMA in any capacity have been inspired or been a fan of Anderson Silva in their career. If you say you're not, I don't really know what you're watching. And I think what Bisping said there was so true, in that if you watch, even in the first round, right? I didn't get to see the fight live. Cory, called and kind of gave me the lowdown before I got to watch it, before we came on here to come live and talk on this video with you guys. The first 3 minutes of the first round, and even I would argue into the second round, because Anderson started to get off in the last 2 minutes of the first round as well. Mm-hmm. You kind of could see that he didn't want to really let his hands go for that exact reason, because Anderson Silva has made a career of making guys get cleaned out when they come in wild. Mm-hmm. So, first of all, props to Urijah Hall for being able to, pick his spots and be able to know when to put it on. Because at first I kind of thought, damn, Anderson's really got him mind shook, and this is going to be a problem.
I don't know if you peeped it in your rewatch, but Anderson landed really hard at roughly about the minute and a half marker. Once they actually started to let their hands go even a little bit, he landed a very hard counter shot once Hall did throw
Anderson
something.
Landed a lot of hard shots.
He really did.
It's
he
not
truly
like he
impressed
looked
me.
bad, dude.
I said this in our run-up to the video. I kind of wish they wouldn't. I understand the man's paid. He's been, and granted, he's deservingly paid. But I also think that Urijah Hall wasn't the greatest matchup for him in the world, because of the fact that he is such a... When he wants to go out there and pour
he's
it on
a killer,
people,
dude.
He's an absolute killer. I think they should have done him with somebody maybe more of his age. Not quite no means am I saying a gimme fight, but something that's a lot more reasonable for him to win. I think he had a shot to win last night's fight, but I just don't... It wasn't what I wish we would have seen for his last fight in the UFC. That being said, though, I would like to get your opinions. What's next for Anderson Silva? Because Dana White came out and said, I shouldn't even have gave him this fight, but that being said, I'm not going to tell a grown man what he can and can't do. He has one more fight in the UFC on his contract, but we're not going to give it to him, is what Dana White said. So I'm not going to hold him from doing whatever he wants with his career. But he's done in the UFC, was his exact words. So what would you like to see next for the Spider?
I'm not necessarily mad at Dana saying he doesn't want Anderson to fight again. Mainly because Anderson's getting older. And even though it's Anderson Silva, outside of putting together like super fights and things like that, I don't see Anderson Silva getting near the title again. I don't see him beating Israel Adesanya at this point. They've already fought. You know, obviously a John Jones fight at this point to me doesn't really make a lot of sense. I understand what Dana's saying. Sometimes I hate when, you know, he deems it time for somebody to retire. But in this case, I'm not saying it's time for Anderson to retire at all. I understand why he doesn't want him to fight in the UFC, but I think this fight is evident that Anderson still got a lot left in the tank. As far as this fight and the matchup with Uriah Hall, I understand what you're saying with, you know, giving him such a killer to fight with, but being that it's Anderson Silva, I don't think Anderson would have wanted anything else. I don't think he would have wanted, and like you said, I know you don't mean a gimme fight, but I don't think he would have wanted anything less than, you know, somebody who's a top tier competition. So I have no problem with the matchup for that Dana put together on this one. I think it's what Anderson would have wanted. I mean, this fight, you know, has been rumored a few times too. And I mean, especially, you know, and another thing that hasn't been talked about enough, please let Uriah Hall finally get his just due. This man was supposed to fight Yoel Romero. That didn't happen. He was supposed to fight Jacare. Jacare got COVID. I mean, dude, the dude has had the big fight set up to get him into that top tier so that people are looking at him more. I hope after this fight, this better be a big enough statement to me before you get to it. This better be a big enough statement to me to where he gets his next big fight. As far as what I think Anderson's going to do from here, I think Scott Coker probably will be giving him a phone call real soon, and we might be seeing him with our homie Miles Fury Jury, which you can check out his last interview there in the top right corner. I don't know. I think he's going to be the next name on the list of veterans like a Fedor or a Ryan Bader, who maybe didn't do as good in the UFC, or Roy Nelson, who, you know, go over to Bellator and make that bread. And hot damn it, Anderson Silva deserves that money. But if you want to know what I think, it's going to be Bellator.
If you, I could see that. I could. I seen an argument. I forget which show it was, so I wish I could give credit, but it was one of the podcasts that I regularly watch. But they brought up the fact that even though I'm not personally rooting for this, but I think he could do very well over there. Is a lot. BKFC's been throwing around a lot of money at people.
Anderson Silva, though?
They've been throwing money at everybody. I agree with you. I actually would rather see him go to Bellator because personally, I feel as though he has if he was to put on the performance that he just put on against Uriah Hall, and I mean, granted, his age is continuing to catch up to him more and more, but if he was to put on another performance like he just did, he has a serious shot of beating somebody like Gegard Mousasi, who just competed for Bellator and just successfully won back the 185 belt.
See, and that's my point. I think Bellator is the better way to go. Here's my problem with him going to Bare Knuckle FC. Anderson Silva, more than most fighters you will ever see, uses the 8 points of contact. His knees, his elbows, his face, his kicks, his feet. Now, yes, obviously, do you know what you're signing up for when you go to do those things? To me, I don't really feel like there's enough money nor enough of an upside for Anderson to go fight in Bare Knuckle FC. Plus, to me, you're also hindering so many of his most dangerous weapons. I think if we see him go anywhere, to me, Bellator is the only one that makes sense for the exact reasons that you said. And I hate to say this, and it's not a shot at Bellator, because obviously, like I said, we have friends that are fighting in Bellator. But like we talk about, there's levels to this shit. And the UFC is the top level for a reason. That's why you see guys like Ryan Bader go over there and run shop. Hell, just like we just talked about, Miles Jury goes over there. Okay, he lost to Ben Henderson, but he's on a 3-fight win streak and is arguably next in line for a title shot. The guys that are coming over from the UFC, like a Ryan Bader, like a Roy Nelson, like a Corey Anderson, who's getting ready to make his debut for Bellator.
Main event, first fight,
you know,
of course.
There's a reason why these guys do so much better in Bellator, and I think it's because of the competition difference.
Yeah. Well,
and I feel like if you put a guy like Anderson Silva, who, if we're just judging it based upon take his age out of it, take all that out of it, skill-wise, even in the UFC, it was evident in the fight last night. He still is very, very skilled because he cracked Uriah Hall quite a few times. So for me, I feel like there's a lot of upside left. I just think bare knuckle FC isn't the place I see it because it cuts too many of his weapons. Now, if money talks and bullshit walks, okay? If they offered him a shit ton of money, could I see him fighting there? Yes. But at this point, I don't think it's any secret. I would say that it's not about the money for Anderson Silva at this point. I think, if anything, he's going to want to try to go do what only a few people have been able to do, and that's get a UFC and a Bellator belt. And I think it's very feasible that he could not only win the belt at 185. Hell, I wouldn't be shocked if he tries to win their belt at 205. That's just my personal opinion on that one, but what do you think?
I think 205, now that Bader's lost that belt and they have Vemkov as their champion at 205, I do not see that as much of a possibility. He's not much of a known guy, but he is an absolute destroyer. So I don't really see that at 205.
At 85, he can take their belt easy to me.
I don't see easy because I see Mousasi still as very stiff competition. I mean, I see Lima, not to make this video about something it's not, but did you watch the Bellator event that they did?
I didn't get to see it.
Okay, so it was Lima against Mousasi for the 185 belt that was open because Lovato Jr. Wasn't able to get cleared to defend his belt. So anyway,
that's another thing. Before you say that, I think that's bullshit. How quick they are to vacate a title now.
Well, he hasn't been able to fight for a year and a half, and he has a brain injury. I watched a podcast on him. He's actually a very interesting character, and now he's transitioned into the coaching aspect of MMA. For those of you not aware of Lovato Jr., go check him out. He's a very, very, very high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist that actually hails from the United States, but is widely regarded as one of the top practitioners in the world. That being said, he wasn't able to defend his belt. It was kind of a lackluster fight, if I'm going to be honest. Lima wasn't able to get anything going against Mousasi. Mousasi kind of put his, not humongous size advantage, but his size advantage to use and kind of wore on Lima a little bit and ended up getting a decision. Nothing crazy, honestly. He didn't miss too much.
It was a Mousasi fight.
Yeah. That being said, though, I completely agree with you. Bellator would be a completely interesting fight because I feel only just on name value alone, but on performance, you could absolutely give them a fight against each other right off rip. Real quick, though, because I feel like we've been talking about this main event for a long time. What about that co-main event? Were you able to go back and check that out?
Yes, I did. And first of all, them camo shorts are dope as fuck. I'm just going to throw that out there. Look, when even Kamaru Usman is saying he wants him a pair of camo trunks, shout out to you, Bryce Mitchell, and shout out even more that you were able to go in there and get a win over a guy like Touchy Fili, who we mentioned Miles Jury when we were talking about that main event. Him and Touchy Fili scrapped right before Miles left the UFC, and he got a win over our homie Miles Jury. So, I mean, this dude has been a top guy. And as Fili said, big respect to Fili before I get on my thoughts about Bryce Mitchell, because I think he's really showed that he is exactly what he says he is, and that's one of the top 145ers. If you're watching this, let us know in the comments what you think about any of this stuff we're saying. If you think we're full of shit, let us know, and shout out to all those people who have been dropping comments, like the African Ninja, who let us know that he loved our interview with Darius Estelle the other day. Stay tuned, there's a lot more coming that way. But I feel like he really cemented the fact that he's a top-tier contender, but Bryce Mitchell did what Bryce Mitchell does. Bryce Mitchell got that takedown, and even though Fili said coming into this he thought that he was going to be, more superior on the ground, Bryce Mitchell's nasty, dude. He's one of only 2 people to ever pull off a twister in a fight. For those of you who don't know and have never been put in a twister, I can tell you from personal experience, this shit hurts. Okay, and there's a reason that they call it a twister. And for those, that looks like it hurts, but it's probably not that bad. I promise you. Sit in that for any amount of time at all, and your neck is gonna feel like you got it wrung around in a motherfucking vice.
Well, that being
but
said,
that's just me. What do you think?
That being said, though, I think it kind of shows just what a level Fili was on, because Bryce Mitchell wasn't able to get any of those techniques off.
I agree.
In my opinion, he wasn't able to really. I think the thing that's going to really push Bryce Mitchell over the hill to the elite guys is if he's able to not only continue what he's doing with the wrestling and continue getting better at controlling the position, but if he's able to really work on his ground and pound from that position, that he'll become Khabib level grappling at the 140.
See, but I got a counter argument to that, though. I feel like a lot of the reason you didn't see a lot of the ground and pound, though, I don't think it's so much that Bryce doesn't have the control as it is Fili really showed his takedown defense. Even if you watch the very first takedown that Bryce
he was
Mitchell,
the bigger man too.
Well,
out of the 2,
sure, but he did. But just technique wise, I'm not even talking about from a size standpoint. If you watch when Bryce Mitchell took him down the first time in the first round, the way in which Fili was able to immediately jam the head, keep the balance, keep himself back up. He got put back down, got right back up. Now, granted, did Bryce Mitchell eventually get the positions he wanted? Yes. But in most of the fights we've seen from Bryce Mitchell, once he gets you down to the ground, he's mauling you. I think that, again, further goes to the skill level of Touchy Fili. I definitely think there's going to be another high-profile fight for him after this one. Maybe he's got to get a couple more wins. But big win for Bryce Mitchell. I mean, it's a very notable fight. This moves him up in the rankings. And here's the better question. So we know that Venom is taking over.
I was going to make that
Are
point
y'all
myself.
motherfuckers going to get this guy some camo shorts, or how many fights does he got to win under Venom's reign to get some shorts? Or should his just have the camo boy?
I have the feeling that Venom is going to come out striking, if you get what I'm saying, as a snake would, with a lot of custom gear. I think a lot of these top guys, especially the ones that are more creative outside of just the octagon, I think they're going to come up with a lot of custom designs. I mean, if yet again, to peel back into the boxing side, if you guys watched a couple weeks back when they had the Teofimo Lopez Lomachenko fight, Lomachenko is sponsored by Venom, so he was actually in a
I was talking about
fit for the Matrix outfit.
Right.
And I mean
that bitch was crispy.
It was.
And I was watching that fight while we were in LA. We were there for GCW Last Stand. Last Resort, excuse me. The Last Stand and the Last Resort. It was the last stand before everybody got pissed off about COVID. But anyways, you can check that out in the corner, man. We were there with past guests of the show, Mega Rambo. We were watching this fight, at least I was. Corey was watching it still here in the mitten. I was in LA eating some sushi while we were watching this. And that was the first thing I said to our homie Derek Montilla of the Steel Cage podcast. I noticed the Venom shorts. I'm like, well, damn, I've never seen Venom in boxing like that. But I mean, hey, big ups to Venom, because I mean, I think with them getting on a level like that, it's showing that they're that contender in more than just MMA. And it did look crispy, but I mean, that's one thing I really do hope with the new Venom fight kits is that there's more individuality for each guys, because it was mentioned last night in the fights that in addition to Bryce Mitchell, the only one who's ever gotten a custom short other than that was McGregor, and his were just green championship
which
shorts.
Isn't
so I mean, they were still dope, but they weren't
very limited.
I feel like if he'd have had more input, it would have had a lot more into it.
And well, it goes into what I was saying with the fact that they had custom deals. Now, I don't know if that's just because they have a specific deal signed with Loma. It's even, if you go look on their website, they even have a Loma line that you can go purchase his design stuff. So that's what I see why they did it with him. But that being said, I really hope they extend that through when they move their way into the UFC and transition in the upcoming year. I think they could do a lot, because if you just look at the patterns and stuff that they've done throughout the years, even if you go back and look before the Reebok deal, I feel as though they had the best looking attire when you would see people dressed in like some of the like more snake skin style, like the red snake skins and stuff like that Venom did. They had some really sick gear back in the day. So
I mean, they were, and they're dope for sure. We know you didn't come here to hear our fashion advice, but like I said, that's our thoughts on this co-main event, this main event. What comes next from Bellator for Anderson Silva. There was also the fight that has now been named. We mentioned Conor McGregor. It's now been confirmed by Dana White after the fight that he's going to be fighting Dustin Poirier. That's going to be a banger of a fight. They're running it back for the second time, but I think it's a fight that needs to be run back if you're really going to truly figure out who the next guy at 55 is. But the question is, could that fight just be the next number one contender fight, considering that they've already said Khabib, it's already being hyped that Khabib wants 30-0.
So I think that's where our viewers need to check in for our video that we're going to be uploading shortly after this, because Dana came back and released so much news that I don't even want to try to tail it on the end of this video. I think that's going to be peace for this boy, because there's some hot facts coming at you in the next one. So we'll be back with you shortly. Any final thoughts, though, on the Halloween event and seeing Anderson Silva's retirement?
I think the best way to, cap out this video is briefly, Corey, what do you think the legacy of Anderson Silva is going to be in the UFC?
In my eyes...
and where does he rank on greatest of all time?
So, in my eyes, currently... And I feel like this is a far too discussed thing in a young sport, and I hate to say it like that.
Is it really a young sport, though?
It is. It is a young sport, in my eyes at least, because it's only been predominant really since like the early 2000s. But that being said, either way, to tail off of that, Anderson Silva will forever go down as one of my tops. If you guys watch any of the Schmo interviews, he always asks people who's on their Mount Rushmore. If he's not on your Mount Rushmore, I don't know what kind of list you're putting together, honestly. But that being said, he's just, he really, you summed it up great earlier when you made the point of he inspired so many martial artists, not only in his community in Brazil, but just truly around the world. Pretty much everybody in the game now at least has some sort of tie back to Anderson Silva in one way or another.
Or at least they watched him, even if they don't fight like him. The man...
They inspired him, I'm sure, or he inspired them, I'm sure, in some regard. And with that being said, I would like to give a true sign-off to Anderson Silva. What a great career. What a great career in the UFC. And I wish nothing but the best for you. You've been nothing but an inspiration to me, even as somebody who just is a true fan of the game. And I can't wait to see what you do with the rest of your career. What's your final?
Look, man, Anderson Silva is one of the greatest of all time. You hear that talked about so much. You hear that word GOAT. You hear all this stuff thrown out. But if you don't consider Anderson Silva one of the greatest of all time, I don't know what the fuck you're watching. I mean, that, and not to, shit on anybody's, greatest of all time list, and please let us know in the comments. Tweet us at KO3CPod. It's right there on your screen. If you follow us on Instagram, that's right on your screen at KO3CPod as well. Let us know, please. I'm not scared. If you think I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, please tell me. But as far as Anderson Silva goes, I think that we are all in agreement that Anderson Silva goes down as one of the best of all time. If you weren't influenced by him, you most definitely watched him. And it's evident in guys like John Jones, guys like Israel Adesanya, guys like,
Uriah
Hall even, or, there's so many comparisons that before you saw an Anderson Silva, there's a lot of things you just didn't see. Okay? A guy who was truly that unorthodox. There's so many things in the game that were changed by Anderson Silva. And again, as we mentioned with last week's guest, TZ Scott, he's got one of the best entrances of all time. So I think the best way to send Anderson Silva out of the UFC, not off into the sunset. Like I said, I think he's going to Bellator. But if we're talking about the sunset to his career in the UFC, I don't think there's anything else that you could really say. But thank you for the great action. Thank you for the memories. Dana White, if he's not in the UFC Hall of Fame by the next induction, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. And until next time, make sure you check us out this Tuesday as we're going to be talking about all the fallout from this fight, from the Tank Gervonta Davis knockout. We're going to be talking about all the stuff from NXT Halloween Havoc and all that kind of good stuff. And we've got the return of, well, I don't know if he's bald and bougie anymore, but we've got the return of everybody's favorite uncle. Uncle Chase Burnett is coming back with us this Tuesday. We're going to be talking about the Wyatt, I don't know what they're calling it. Pro Wrestling All-Stars is doing a benefit show for our buddy Wyatt and Wyatt Strong. You know, you're going to have Team Orion versus Team Page as your main event, you know, with the Survivor Series theme. What are you guys thinking about Survivor Series as well? Make sure you stay tuned for our picks video for that as well. Like I said, make sure you tune into this Tuesday. Everybody who's been watching the show for a while knows you never know what to expect with Chase Burnett. And with that damn cane he's got, look here, bro. I don't want no smoke with the cane, but you want the smoke. Make sure you check us out. Stay tuned at KO3C Pod. Stay safe. Happy Halloween.